Greetings friends. Thanks for stopping by for a visit. If you enjoy the video, please subscribe.
I know how this is going to sound. I wouldn't believe it either if I read it from someone else. But something was out there with us, and I haven't been able to shake it since. I'm not into paranormal stuff. Never have been. I've worked construction most of my adult life. Road crews, pipeline jobs, logging access roads, the type of work where you're out in the middle of nowhere for weeks or months at a time. You see weird things sometimes, sure, but there's always an explanation if you think it through. This didn't feel like that. A few months back I was on a project down in Chiapas, helping clear and lay out a road through a pretty remote stretch of jungle. Not tourist area, not anywhere you just wander into. We had a small crew, mix of guys from the US and local workers. Long days, heavy equipment, same routine every day. At first nothing seemed off. Just another job. But a couple of the local guys quit early on. No big scene, they just stopped showing up. One of the older workers said something like, "Don't stay out there after dark," when he was leaving. He kinda laughed when he said it, but not really. I figured it was just local superstition or whatever. Thing is, the rest of the crew doesn't really talk about what happened. Not directly, anyway. If you bring it up, people change the subject or just say it was animals, or stress, or lack of sleep. I've had time to think about it since then, and none of that really fits. I'm posting this because I want to know if anyone else who's worked in places like that, remote jungle, heavy clearing jobs, has ever experienced something similar. I don't even know what I'm looking for exactly, just something that makes it make sense. The job itself was pretty standard, at least on paper. We were cutting a path through dense jungle, clearing enough space to bring in machinery and start laying the base for the road. Same routine every day. Wake up early, deal with the humidity already sitting on you, run equipment, cut brush, haul debris. Loud, dirty work. Chainsaws, engines, guys yelling over each other. During the day, it almost felt normal. It was the nights that felt different. Once everything shut down, it got quiet in a way that's hard to explain unless you've been out there. Not silent, there's always insects, distant animals, stuff moving, but the noise feels layered. Like you can't really tell how far away anything is. The jungle closes in fast once the light's gone. You step 10 feet past the work lights and you can't see much of anything. We had a small camp set up just off the cleared section. Nothing fancy, just tents and a couple of temporary structures. Most guys kept to themselves after work, ate, maybe talked for a bit, then turned in. Early on, I started noticing certain areas along the cut didn't feel the same as others. Hard to describe without sounding stupid, but some stretches felt heavier, quieter, even during the day. Like the sound didn't carry right. You'd walk into a section and it just felt off. A few of the local workers avoided those spots altogether. Not in an obvious way, they just found reasons to work somewhere else. One guy crossed himself when we had to clear a thicker patch near the tree line. I asked him about it and he just shook his head, said something like, "Mejor no," and went back to work. I didn't think much of it at the time. Every place has its quirks, especially jobs like that. Looking back, that was probably the first sign something wasn't right. At first, it was small stuff. The kind of thing you don't even really clock as a pattern right away. Tools would go missing. Not big equipment. Nothing you'd notice immediately, but smaller things. Machetes, measuring stakes, marking tape, even a couple of hand tools. In a job like that, things get misplaced all the time, so nobody thought much of it. You assume someone borrowed it or it got left somewhere in the brush. But then they'd turn up again. Not where they were last used, either. I'm talking about places that didn't make sense. A machete stuck upright into the ground at the edge of the clearing when no one had been working there. Bright marking tape tied in neat knots higher up in branches than anyone would reasonably reach without a ladder. Tools laid out side by side on a section we hadn't even touched yet. At first it turned into a joke. Guys accusing each other of messing around, trying to get a rise out of people. But no one ever owned up to it, and after a while the jokes just kind of stopped. That's when I started paying closer attention. One morning, I came into a section we had cleared the day before, and the ground was still soft from the rain overnight. That's when I saw the footprints. Small. Too small to be any of us, and not shaped like any animal I recognized. Not paw prints, not hooves, actual footprints. But off. The spacing was strange, and they looked deeper than they should have been, like whatever made them had more weight than its size made sense for. I remember crouching down and just staring at them longer than I probably should have, trying to logic it out. Kid from a nearby village, maybe, but we were far enough out that didn't really track, and even then, something about the shape didn't sit right. After that, I started noticing movement more. Not clear, not direct, just quick shifts at the edge of the tree line. Like something pulling back right as you look over. A branch moving when there's no wind. That feeling like you caught something in your peripheral, but when you turn your head, there's nothing there. I kept telling myself it was animals. Has to be. Monkeys, maybe. Birds. Anything but what it was starting to feel like. Still, it didn't explain the way it all seemed. Deliberate. Like whatever was out there wasn't just passing through. It was watching. Then I had an experience that confirmed my suspicions. It happened right at the edge of the tree line, just after sunset when the light starts going flat and everything kind of loses depth. We were still finishing up a late stretch of work that day. Nothing unusual, just trying to get a section marked before calling it. I stayed behind a little longer than the others, checking some measurements near the cleared edge. Most of the crew had already started heading back toward camp. The jungle gets louder in a different way right around that time. Not louder like noise volume, but like everything comes forward at once. Insects, birds, something moving through leaves. You stop noticing individual sounds, and it just becomes this constant pressure in your ears. I remember standing there with my marker stakes, looking out into the darker line where the clearing stopped and the trees began. It always feels like a wall more than a transition out there. That's when I saw movement. At first I thought it was just someone from the crew coming back to grab something they forgot. I even remember half turning and about to say something. But the shape wasn't right. Too low to the ground. Moving in a way that didn't match a person walking. It was fast, but not frantic. Controlled. Like it knew exactly where it was going without needing to look. I squinted, trying to make it out against the dim light. I honestly told myself it was probably just a kid from a nearby settlement, maybe wandered too far. That was the first rational thought that came up. But then it stopped, right at the edge of the clearing. And it looked at me. I don't know how I knew that, because I couldn't see eyes clearly. But I felt it, like the direction of attention changed. It wasn't random anymore. It was watching me. I stood still for a second, probably longer than I should have. My brain was trying to catch up, still insisting there was a reasonable explanation. Some small animal standing up weird, maybe perspective messing with me. But the longer I looked, the more wrong it felt. The proportions didn't settle into anything familiar. Too compact, but upright. Almost human, but off in a way I can't really describe properly. Then it shifted slightly. Not running, not hiding. Just a small movement back into the darker line of trees, like it was deciding something. That's when I felt it. This strong, immediate instinct to not follow it. Not even to step forward. I turned away first. I remember that clearly. Not because I was scared in the moment, but because something in me just said don't keep looking at that. When I looked back a second later, there was nothing there. No movement, no sound. Just the same dark edge of trees like it had never happened. I told myself it was lighting, fatigue, whatever. But I didn't go back to that edge again that night. I didn't say anything about what I saw that night. Honestly, I tried to forget it. You do that on jobs like this. You sleep, you wake up, you keep working. The mind fills in gaps when you let it sit too long on something that doesn't make sense. A couple days passed without anything unusual. At least nothing I could point to directly. I kept telling myself it was just a visual trick. Low light, tired eyes. The usual explanations you reach for when something doesn't fit. Then the second encounter happened, and it didn't give me the option to explain it away as easily. It was midday this time, which is part of what made it stick with me. Bright sun, loud equipment running, guys scattered across the work zone cutting and clearing. We were deeper into the section by then, further from the original camp, still pushing the road forward through the jungle. I was working near a pile of cleared brush and dirt that had been pushed aside by one of the machines. Nothing unusual, just part of the normal mess of the job. That's when I heard the tapping. It wasn't loud at first, just a soft, repetitive knocking sound coming from inside the pile, almost like something hitting wood or metal in a rhythm. I remember pausing and looking around, expecting one of the guys to be messing around or dropping tools somewhere nearby. But nobody was close enough. The sound kept going. I walked toward it, thinking maybe something had gotten trapped under the debris, like a tool or equipment piece shifting. I called out once, didn't get a response, so I started moving brush aside with my hands. The knocking got sharper as I got closer. For a second, I remember thinking I was about to uncover some animal stuck under there. Maybe a small dog or something that wandered too far. That's how my brain framed it at the time. Then I saw movement. Not fully at first. Just a quick shift beneath the branches, like something pulling back from where I was reaching. I pushed a bit more material aside, slower this time. That's when I saw the hand. Small, not like a child's exactly, but similar in size. It moved fast, withdrawing deeper into the gap beneath the debris before I could really focus on it. I froze. There was a sound right after that, like quick scrambling, but contained, controlled, not panicked, like whatever it was knew exactly how to move through tight spaces. I tried to lean in further, but the whole pile shifted slightly and I caught a glimpse of a face through the gaps. It wasn't clear. It never really fully showed itself. But it was enough. Human-like shape. Too close to familiar to dismiss, but wrong in the details. The eyes looked too large for the space, or maybe just too dark. I can't say for sure. I just remember the feeling of it looking back at me and immediately pulling away again. I stepped back fast. One of the other guys noticed me and asked what I was doing. I tried to explain it like I was checking for a tool or something, but even as I said it, I knew it sounded off. Later that day, I mentioned it loosely to a coworker I trusted. Didn't go into detail. Just said I heard something under the brush and saw movement. He shut it down immediately. Didn't laugh. Didn't joke. Just said, "Don't dig in that stuff. Leave it." And walked off like that was the end of it. That was the first time I started thinking maybe I wasn't the only one noticing things. After that second encounter, I started doing what I guess most people would do in my position. I stayed busy, stayed around other guys, didn't wander off alone unless I had to. I also stopped looking too closely at anything that didn't have a clear explanation. For a few days, nothing happened. Or at least nothing obvious. The job kept moving, the clearing got deeper, and the road cut started to take shape in a way you could actually recognize. But the jungle doesn't really feel like it stays quiet. It just shifts. That night, I went to bed tired in a way that made sleep come fast. I remember that part clearly. No overthinking, no replaying things in my head. Just exhaustion. Sometime later, I don't know exactly when, I woke up. Not fully at first. Just that half-aware state where you're still inside your body but not really thinking clearly. The tent was dark, but not completely. There was light from the work lamps outside bleeding through the fabric in dull patches. That's when I heard it. Footsteps. Soft, but distinct. Not like animals. Not like wind brushing against the tent either. These were controlled, deliberate sounds moving just outside the structure. At first I assumed it was someone from the crew, maybe checking something. That wouldn't have been unusual, but something about the timing felt wrong. It was too late for routine movement, and too quiet for someone who wasn't trying to be noticed. I stayed still and listened. The footsteps didn't just pass by. They lingered around the camp area, moving between equipment. Slow, careful sounds on gravel and dirt. Then came the scratching. Light contact against metal. Not forceful. More like something testing surfaces. Touching, pulling away, moving again. I remember sitting up at that point, very slowly. I didn't even think about it. I just reacted. My body was already ahead of my thoughts. I pulled the tent flaps slightly open. The camp outside was dim, lit mostly by the perimeter lights we left on overnight. Shadows were heavy between machinery and stacked materials. At first, I didn't see anything. Then movement between two pieces of equipment. Small shapes. Not just one. A few. I can't say exactly how many because my brain didn't want to lock onto it. But there were multiple figures moving through the work zone. Low to the ground. Quick but not chaotic. They weren't running. They were navigating the space like they belonged there. I remember thinking for a second that it had to be crew members messing around. That was the only thing my mind could comfortably reach for. But then one of them climbed up onto a piece of machinery and stopped. It just stood there, looking directly at me. Even at that distance, something about the posture made my stomach drop a bit. It wasn't random movement anymore. It felt aware, focused. Then I realized the others had also stopped moving. All of them, like they were listening for something, or waiting. I stayed frozen in the tent opening, trying to process what I was seeing without fully accepting it. The rational part of my mind kept trying to patch it over. Lighting, distance, exhaustion, anything that would make it fit. But nothing about it behaved like people. Not even like animals. One of them shifted slightly, and I got a clearer outline for a second. Small frame. Human-like proportions, but wrong in subtle ways that I can't really describe cleanly. Too compact in some areas. Too smooth in movement. Like it wasn't built the same way we are. Then something happened that I still can't explain properly. The one on the machinery tilted its head slightly, and I felt, this is the only way I can say it, a kind of recognition. Not emotional, not friendly, just awareness. Like it knew I was there, fully, and had known for a while. The others started moving again after that. Slowly, like whatever pause had happened was over. They didn't rush. They didn't scatter. They just moved through the equipment, weaving between structures in a way that suggested familiarity with the space. I remember noticing details I shouldn't have been able to focus on in that moment. The way they avoided direct light. The way they seemed to use shadows more than paths. The way they never bumped into anything, even in cluttered areas. And then, just as suddenly as it started, it was like they were gone. Not in a dramatic way. No running, no disappearance. Just no longer visible in the space I was watching. One moment they were there, and then they weren't. I stayed awake the rest of the night. Not because I wanted to, because I didn't feel like I should stop watching. After that night, things didn't go back to normal, even if the work did. The next morning, nobody really talked about what happened. That's something I noticed across the whole job. When something weird happened, it just didn't get processed out loud. People would joke about other stuff, complain about the heat, the equipment, anything but the night before. I checked around the camp and equipment like I always did. Nothing obvious was damaged. No signs of anything being moved in a way I could point to and prove. That almost made it worse, honestly, because it left me with no clean way to explain it away. A few days after that, I started noticing more resistance in the project itself. Not like sabotage or anything clear. Just constant delays in the same areas where I had seen things before. Equipment issues, minor collapses in sections that were already stabilized, measurements that didn't line up right the second time. It was always something small enough to dismiss individually. But together it didn't feel random anymore. Eventually, I finished my part of the job and left the site early when I could. I didn't make a big deal out of it. Most people don't. You just rotate off and move to the next project. I haven't worked anywhere like that since. I don't know what I saw exactly, and I'm not trying to turn this into something it isn't. I'm not saying gnomes like it's a fact. That's just the closest word I have for it after everything else stops making sense. I'm posting this because I want to know if anyone else who's worked deep jungle or remote construction has ever run into anything similar.
Thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories like these, please like and subscribe.